Good morning, my fellow Martians. Welcome to another episode of Mixed Martian Arts. My name is Austin Shaper, and this is a show where we explore the topics of UAP, UFC, and World War III. Today is going to be a I almost said UFC episode. Today is going to be a World War III episode covering the interview that Tucker Carlson gave a few days ago. And in this interview, he mentioned a lot of crazy things, a few of them being Obama being gay and sleeping with men, to Trump being assassinated, to a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to breeze right past those points and go into what he mentioned about Russia. So in this interview, Tucker Carlson mentioned that he believes with certainty that our government, the United States government, is going to lead us into a hot war with Russia within the next year for the purpose of staying in power, of preventing the election, enacting wartime powers. You guys know when, like a big war is declared, they do have the ability to kind of like hold up the elections, suspend them, push them down the road until the war is done. That's currently going on in Ukraine right now. Zelensky had come out within the past couple of days and said that the only way he'll do an election right now during this war is if the United States fronts the bill for it. That was very interesting to hear. I don't even know what to make of that, so you guys can have your own opinion on that. That's just a wild thing to say. I can understand the attitude of not wanting to have an election during a war, it being, I guess, a distraction from the ultimate goal of like defending your country, but at the same time, isn't the whole point we're defending democracy? But I guess that's neither here nor there, but crazy times. But to go off of what Tucker Carlson said, I want your guys' thoughts on this because I have multiple thoughts. One of them being, I do believe that what his point overall, his prediction overall, that we're going to be in a war with Russia in the next year, I think that's a pretty good prediction. If I was a betting man, I would say put your odds on that. The odds are in favor of that more than this like breezing over. A lot of people online still seem to think that that's just a fear-mongering point and that this is going to just continue to be a proxy war because the United States likes proxy wars, and it's not going to escalate into a direct confrontation because it serves neither party. Nor Russia or the United States and NATO would not benefit from this war, so they don't want to do it. They will keep it a proxy war. I understand that sentiment. I really do, and that is possible. I'm not speaking from a position of authority saying that is a 100% we're going to war with Russia. Now, Tucker said that the reason why we're going to be going to war with Russia is so that the election could be suspended and the Democrats can stay in power and possibly prevent Trump from being able to win the presidency. That opens up a whole can of worms. Is that possible? It is possible, and I think that one, I don't want to get myself banned from YouTube, so I want to be careful about what I say and how I say it. But I do think that the people in power right now are Looney Tunes, and there's not much they wouldn't do. Evidence would show us that there's not much they wouldn't do to prevent Trump from getting into office. Now, do I think this entire thing is orchestrated, this whole war with Ukraine and Russia, and the potential of it turning into a hot, conflict, an actual kinetic war right before or during election season? Do I think that's all just for Trump to prevent him? I don't know. I can't say for any certainty, but that seems like a little bit of a stretch. Maybe you guys feel differently about it. I do think it's possible. Like I said, I think these people are fucking loons, and I do think that they would do just about anything to prevent him from getting into office for whatever nefarious reasons that is. I don't know. I just don't know. You guys can let me know your thoughts. Now, as far as his prediction of the war, I do think it's very likely. And, Russia, I think just this morning or yesterday, put I think they're called the Sarmat or the Satan II intercontinental ballistic missiles. What a lovely name, right? What a fitting name. They put them on combat duty. So, they're clearly, I don't know if you can say they're winning the war, but I think that if the war continues to be prolonged and the United States support continues to come in, even at the rate that it is, although the rate is exponentially insane. I mean, especially considering like how much money we gave to the people, the victims of the Maui fires in Hawaii compared to the money we're giving to Ukraine. It is absolutely an insane amount of money. That being said, is it enough to win a war against a much larger superpower who also possesses nuclear weapons that they haven't even tapped into during this war? No, I think that's kind of crazy talk. I don't see how you could possibly beat them. At the end of the day, you can hold them off for a while, and they have done that successfully. I think Ukraine has done that successfully for the most part, because they're not completely swamped by the Russians yet, and it's been a year and a half. So, props to them for fighting as hard as they have. But at the same time, I think it is an eventuality if a bigger nation doesn't directly come in to support Ukraine, be that maybe NATO as a whole or maybe even just Poland. If some big power does not intervene between this conflict and they just continue to provide equipment and logistical support and whatnot, I don't think that's enough to stop the Russians. I really don't. I mean, it's a war of attrition, a war of numbers. Russia's got them beaten absolutely every way, and you keep hearing on the news now. They're saying, well, the Ukrainians have more will to fight. The Russians don't have the will to fight. They don't have the motivation to be there. That is like the same stuff that Japan said about why they were going to beat the Americans in World War II. Is they couldn't beat them logistically. They didn't have the numbers. Didn't have the strength, didn't have the logistical supplies and oil, et cetera, and so they relied on this this belief that they had a stronger willpower to defend, their nation versus the United States being so far from home on a bunch of islands they couldn't even pronounce, that the American public knew nothing about. They didn't have the willpower to continue the fight. Japan thought they were going to take these islands and set up this defense perimeter, and the Americans were not going to have the will to be able to take them. We saw how that turned out. Not so good. So that mindset of, the Ukrainians have a bigger will to fight. I mean, I do think it's a factor. I just think it's not a winning or losing factor. I think it's just one piece of a giant, machine, one cog in the machine. And as far as Tucker's prediction goes, I got to say, I think he's right. I do think we're likely going to be facing a war with Russia unless something drastic changes. Maybe whoever gets into office in the political election next year in America, potentially, if this Vivek guy gets in, maybe he stops the conflict, makes a peace treaty happen. We do know the United States is the country that's pretty much preventing a peace treaty from happening, or at least was a party to stopping that last year, along with Boris Johnson from the UK. So what's more likely, peace or war? I think the trends and forces right now coming together show me that it's more likely that it's probably war, and I think that's really scary. Now, do I think that means nuclear war? I don't know that it does. I think that that's kind of worst case scenario, and I think at the end of the day, this isn't going to be worst case scenario like doomsday stuff, but I do think that one or two tactical nukes could get launched, potentially at a NATO base or a city, and create a giant scare in the hopes that that'll prevent the conflict from escalating. Russia could think, hey, we shoot one or two of these things off, maybe we'll scare NATO into ceasing the support. Basically, it has to come to a head at some point. And as I always say, this hasn't gone like the ways you would see in the movies, right? Like in the movies, it seems like if a war is going to happen, it kind of happens quick. Some big event happens, some attack, Pearl Harbor, etc., and then we're in the war. This one is kind of different so far in that it's we are funding this proxy war, and a lot of people say we're already at war with Russia. I don't really agree with that. I understand why people say it, but we're not at war with Russia. If we were at war with Russia, Americans would be dying, and no Americans are dying other than volunteers right now. So I don't think we're at war with Russia, but I do think this is not happening in the typical time frame that a lot of people kind of suspected, and so they changed their opinion and said, it's never going to happen. I think if you keep up with this news as frequently as I do and a lot of other people do, then you kind of got to come to the conclusion that there's a high probability that Russia's going to get fed up with this at some point. Either Russia's going to get fed up, or maybe they do get pushed back to their borders, or maybe Ukraine starts to encroach on Crimea, and that's the triggering factor, or maybe one of these nuclear plants goes up in smoke, like Zaporizhia, or something could happen. All it takes is one thing to light this powder keg. It's kind of amazing, truly, that it hasn't happened already. And the reason why this war is happening, there's a million factors. There's Russia's perspective of NATO encroaching on their borders and breaking their treaties and agreements not to do that. There's the attitude of What some people say, why this is all happening, is that a cover-up of the Burisma stuff with Biden. Is an entire war being fought for that reason? I don't know. I mean, the American government is the most powerful in the world, and that makes, I guess, Biden, even though I don't know if he's really running this stuff, that does technically by default kind of make him the most powerful figure in the world. And would he go to such lengths to support a nation to the degree that he is, to cover up maybe he's being blackmailed in this Burisma stuff? I don't know. It is possible. It's hard to make heads or tails of it. I don't know if an entire war would be fought over it, but I mean, man, I think you do have to observe the level of support and see that we've never given this much money to a foreign nation. I think since World War II, we've never helped one nation this much. I mean, you saw how much we're helping our own people in Hawaii versus how much we're helping the Ukrainians. Now, is that being fought for a righteous cause? No, it's not. They're selling it to you as a moral justification is why we're supporting them. Obviously, it's not. There's some strategic, be it blackmail, be it strategic reasons. There's some reason that we are kind of not privy to, or at least the news isn't covering. I know a lot of people have their theories. I have a few. I just don't know what's real. But at the end of the day, I don't think we're supporting Ukraine for the right reasons. And are we going to war with Russia? Yeah, man, I think we probably are. If something drastic doesn't change, like another president getting into office. I do think, off the top of my head, just speculating here, I do think that's probably the most, if there was a way to stop this war and to prevent the escalation into a direct conflict, I think the most likely would be, the switch up of a new presidential candidate, one who is not wanting to be in this war, and one who's willing to make peace. I know Vivek, I'm actually a big fan of him so far. I don't keep up with politics hardly at all, but on social media at all lately, it seems like that dude is kind of all over the place. If you scroll on your feed, even on Twitter, he's all over the place. And so I naturally ended up watching some of his clips. He talked about the Ukraine-Russia war, and he says, you'd have to cede probably some territory from Ukraine, and that's not necessarily the tasteful thing to do from the Ukrainian perspective, but that all treaties kind of end in that way where both sides kind of have to give up more than they want to, and that in order to stop the war, he believes that on our side, the NATO American side, we would have to convince Russia to cease their military alliance with China. I thought that was kind of an optimistic take, because even if they did sign such a deal, which that would be kind of a far stretch to get them to do such a thing, even if they did, they could just have a secret military alliance, right? It doesn't have to be something in the public sphere. So I'm a fan of Vivek so far for as little as I know about him and the videos I've seen of him, but I thought that was kind of an overly optimistic take. Russia and China could just lie about it. That's simple. Say, okay, we'll sign a treaty, and then go behind each other, your back, and, continue to build up your military cooperation. So, but he did think that peace was necessary, and that it's wrong to be funding this war, and that it's, causing all sorts of problems, and that the combination of China and Russia being together creates the biggest adversary the United States has possibly faced. Now that I do agree with 100%. 100%. I think that duo of China and Russia, and then I guess you can throw North Korea in there, you can throw Iran in there, and probably a few other countries, but those four are a dangerous combination. They outmatch us. Those four outmatch the United States individually in like every category: militarily, nuclear weapons, so conventional military, nuclear, in like every facet. So very, very scary that the powers that be in the American government and in NATO as a whole are like willing to push China and Russia together, because that's honestly the end result of what's been happening from this. You're pushing, by funding Taiwan's resistance against China and all the military sales that are going on there in conjunction with the Ukraine-Russia war, you're asking for a military alliance for China and Russia. Why would you do such a thing? Why would you possibly put those superpowers together with a common adversary in the United States? You've got to be fucking crazy to do such a thing. You've got to be so crazy. And I don't know why the reason NATO and the United States have this aggressive tone towards Russia. I do understand there's multiple perspectives at it. I'm not a fan of what Russia did whatsoever. I sometimes get sick of saying that, but seeing as this video might be the first one you've seen of me, I should reiterate, I am not a fan of what Russia did. I am not a fan of Putin. I think it's terrible. I think at the end of the day, even if they were kind of enticed by NATO breaking their treaties and pushing eastward onto the border of Russia, I don't think that gives Russia the right to, invade a sovereign country and, kill innocent people. So I don't believe it was okay. I just think it's not black and white in the sense of what's the morality of this war being fought? Are we defending Ukraine for the right reasons? And is it the right thing to do if it ends up being the catalyst to World War III, where it goes from thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands in Russia and Ukraine dying to then millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dying in a potential global catastrophe that World War III would be. And it's just crazy. I can't believe we're at this time. I remember the night that Putin invaded. I think it was February 24th, something like that, somewhere near the end of February. And my jaw was dropped. I was going to bed watching it, Putin's crazy-ass speech talking about it. And at the time, he even mentioned that he wanted to go, I think, to the borders of Poland. He talked about kind of restoring the old Soviet Union. So sometimes I hear people on the conservative side say that they don't believe that Putin has any intention to go past Ukraine. But if you go back to that opening speech he gave on the start of the invasion, that's not what he said. He said he wanted to restore the old Soviet Union, and he said a bunch of crazy shit. And it's just we're playing with fire, guys. We are absolutely playing with fire. It's so crazy. So at the end of the day, I do agree with Tucker in the sense, I don't know what the reason is. I don't know if it's because of just to stop Donald Trump or for them to keep in power. I think you can't really put it past them. I think anything's possible with these crazy-ass people, but I don't know if that's the only theory. It is one of many theories, but I do think the overall trend is going towards these people, the people in power, both in the just NATO and in the American government specifically, for whatever reason it is, they want to make an enemy out of Russia, a direct enemy, and they are willing to risk everything, your life, my life. They're willing to risk the economy. They're willing to risk absolutely everything. I mean, like I said, we saw how much money they gave to Maui, and then the priority of the donations and the help to actual Americans dying, and then versus the Ukrainian war, how the difference in the level of support and the immediacy, if that's a word, with how fast they're getting that support. It's just, you can see a stark difference, right? And there's a reason for it. It's obviously not morality. If it was morality, they'd be helping the people in Maui much more than they were. And it appears that Biden doesn't really care one bit about that. He cared more about his story of telling everybody about how he almost lost his 67 Corvette in a house fire, so he can relate to these people who are literally being incinerated inside of their cars. I mean, the man is just so out of touch. And this isn't a political show. It's really not. But, I mean, sometimes geopolitics obviously lines up with politics. And so it's kind of inescapable that you're going to form some opinions about it. I just don't like talking about politics all the time because I think it's just a clown show. Even the left versus right, the whole thing is a clown show. A lot of people know that. And if you're not even at that point yet and you're still die hard for one political candidate or another, I think you're just kind of lost in the forest, because these people are they're warmongers, they're loons, they're evil, and not all of them. I'm not saying every single person in the government is, but the large majority of them. You got to kind of be an egomaniac to seek this kind of power out. Anyway, so I do agree with Tucker. I just don't know if it's because of Trump. The military-industrial complex is powerful, it's large, and it's influential. So that alone could be a big enough reason for why we're going towards war, and they help fund the government and all these, congressmen and senators, and it's very intertwined in politics, and that's another reason for all this corruption, is that there's money involved in politics, which ruins the whole thing because people are directly incentivized to profit and lie and deceive and work with people that they ordinarily shouldn't work with, and to start wars when a war isn't necessary. And is this war necessary? No, it's not. I think you could have found peace with Russia and Ukraine. I don't think it would have been a just peace, because I think if we're talking about what's the right thing to do, obviously the right thing to do would be Russia gets the hell out of Ukraine and doesn't come back, and NATO pulls back from the borders, and we stop stoking a conflict. That would be the right thing to do. At the end of the day, it just doesn't look like that's going to happen unless by chances of a I think it would have to be I guess you could say Democrat candidate as well if it was Robert Kennedy Jr. I think that he's been pretty outspoken about making a treaty as well. So hopefully, fingers crossed, someone gets into office that actually wants peace. I don't think it's going to be right peace, as I said, but it's better than World War III, man. It's better than Russia and China teaming up together and coming after NATO and coming after the United States. And I don't know, with the state of our country and both in the moral decay, the military decay, the economic decay, I don't know if we win that war, guys. I really don't know if we win that war, and we don't know how bad it is in these other countries, in China and Russia, with their economies, their military. We don't know what it's like there in reality, but I think if you just look at our nation, the pride comes before the fall, and this is a prideful nation. Our history tells us we win wars, but I think that this war could be different. I think it's very scary. I think the powers are changing. I think China wants to be number one. I think that this conflict with Russia and Ukraine is so dangerous. I just can't believe it. If you just sit there and think about it, rewind life like 2 years ago, could you have even imagined this? All this talk of nuclear war and a conflict between China and Taiwan and Russia. Could you have even, in Ukraine, could you have even imagined it? Like, it seems like it's out of a movie. And we get, I think because of the news cycles and how fast things happen and just how much real life stuff people have going on, it kind of just gets put on the back burner, or it seems like not maybe the most forefront issue to think about. But man, I'm telling you, I need to make a video about this, and I'm going to soon, about how World War II is related to the potential of World War III. But go back and watch some World War II stuff, man, and look at how much it affected everybody's lives, even on an individual basis. Even the people back home, it affected everybody. It affected, if you want to get nuanced about it and really talk about like how it affected generations of people, it's what put America largely in the power position that it is to this day, and I think that position is eroding, and I think we're kind of like a tiger backed into a corner. We would get crazy before we would go out with a fight. I don't think that if we had to choose between peace and being number 2 or number 3 in the world, and maybe the U.S. dollar not being the global reserve currency, or start a war, what do you guys think happens? I think it's 100%, not 100%, but I do think it's 99.9%. These crazy maniacs who aren't going to fight the war themselves, and they're going to send people like you and me to it. They're going to choose war rather than America number 2 or America number 3. They're going to choose war. There's a lot to lose. There's a lot on the line. There's a lot at stake. I agree with Tucker Carlson. I think we're on the cusp of this war. I hope I'm wrong. I pray I'm wrong. I don't know the reasons. This is some nefarious shit going on. Everybody knows it. A lot of people contact me recently who don't really follow this kind of stuff, and everybody's worried. Everybody's on edge. Everybody feels like there's something coming. I think there is, and at the end of the day, that's really why I made this channel. I just think something's coming down the pipe. Is it UFO related? Is it World War III related? Is it just domestically with the American government? Is it this new COVID? I just don't know what's coming, but something's coming, and that's why I have this channel here. I'm going to be covering everything that goes on. Took a little break. I've been gone for about a week and a half from the channel. I apologize for that, guys. Just had so much real life stuff going on, and sometimes I don't have the energy to be able to hop on here. At the end of the day, I do this for fun, and life just kind of took over, but I'm back. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this content, do me a favor, just click subscribe on the video. It's something free and quick, just a click of a button you can do to support me in something I absolutely love doing. And if you guys are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, just click follow, leave me a 5-star review. And lastly, if you guys would like to keep this conversation going daily, talk back and forth with myself and others from all across the world, we got a small, very small, but growing community on Discord at Mixed Martial Arts. You can find the link in the description of this video, where we talk about news, we share breaking stories, share our opinions and our experiences with all 3 of these topics. Maybe you like UFC, but you don't care about UFO stuff, or you like UFOs, but you don't care about World War III. Maybe you care about all 3. We have 3 subcategories with people talking back and forth about all that stuff. So I would love if you guys check that out. Just click the link in the description of this video. I appreciate you guys so much. We'll be back with another video very shortly, I think UFO related, because in my week and a half absence, there have been some developing stuff in the UFO world. So thank you guys so much. Hope you all have a good day. We'll be back soon. Take it easy, fellow Martians.